Here's something wild. Neuroscience research shows that the simple act of putting a feeling into words reduces activity in the amygdala, your brain's threat detection center. One sentence can physically change your brain chemistry. And nobody teaches this in school.
No, they really don't.
If you've ever had someone ask, "How are you feeling?" and all you can say was bad, or I don't know, if emotions hit you like a wave and you have no words for what just happened, this deep dive is going to change that for you. By the end of this deep dive, you'll understand exactly why naming emotions calms your brain. And you'll have a technique you can use the next time feelings overwhelm you.
Yeah, and we really need to start by acknowledging just how terrifying it is to be, like, completely flooded by an emotion you can't even name.
Oh, totally. It's the worst feeling.
Right, because when you lack the vocabulary for what's happening inside your own body, the experience isn't just uncomfortable, it feels entirely out of control. I mean, without a way to describe that internal state, it just dictates your actions, your reactions, and basically your entire reality in that moment.
It's like fighting a ghost in the dark. I was looking through the clinical literature we pulled for this, and there's actually a formal term for this inability to identify and describe emotions. It's called alexithymia.
Yes, alexithymia, it's a huge piece of this puzzle.
And it blew my mind because so many of us walk around with mild to severe versions of this. We learn algebra, right? We learn the state capitals. But if you grew up in an environment where your emotions weren't validated, like maybe you were told stop crying or you're overreacting, you never actually learn the basic vocabulary of your own inner world.
Exactly. And that environmental piece is just so crucial. People with a high degree of alexithymia, they know something is profoundly wrong. Like their heart is racing, their stomach is in knots.
Yeah, the physical symptoms are all there.
Right, but they lack the cognitive map to navigate those sensations. They feel the arisal of the emotion, but they just can't articulate what it is. And, this brings us right to the origins of the describe skill, which comes from Dr. Marsha Linehan.
The creator of dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT.
That's the one. She's a pioneering psychologist, and she originally developed DBT to help individuals with severe emotional instability, specifically those diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, or BPD.
Which is such a big deal. And the sources highlight just how groundbreaking her work is. I mean, DBT is actually the only therapy framework recognized by the Cochrane Collaborative Review as empirically supported for treating BPD.
And the Cochrane Review is basically the gold standard for that kind of research.
Exactly. But what the research also makes very clear, and this is why we're doing this deep dive today, is that these skills are universally applicable. You don't need a specific diagnosis to benefit.
Absolutely not. These are human skills.
Right. And Dr. Linehan built this entire system on a dialectic, which is basically the integration of two seemingly opposite ideas. Because, she saw that traditional therapy just told highly emotional people to change their thoughts, which felt incredibly invalidating.
Oh, it feels terrible when someone just tells you to think differently when you're in pain.
Right. So she balanced the active, practical need for behavioral change with the radical acceptance of the present moment, exactly as it is. Oh, and I should probably mention right here, just to be clear, what we share here at DBT is educational. These are real skills you can start practicing today. We're not therapists, and this isn't therapy. But these skills come from one of the most researched therapy frameworks in existence.
I'm so glad you brought that up. It's an important distinction. So to understand how the describe skill fits into that balance of acceptance and change, we have to look at how DBT categorizes our processing. Linehan outlines 3 states of mind.
Okay, I love this part.
Yeah, it's so helpful. So first is reasonable mind. This is your cool, rational, task-oriented state. It's the part of you that, balances a spreadsheet or plans a grocery list. It operates entirely detached from emotion.
So purely logical.
Pure logic. Then, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, you have emotion mind. This is when your feelings completely hijack the driver's seat. Your thoughts, your urges, your actions, they're all dictated by whatever you are feeling, and logic is basically locked in the trunk.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because thinking about emotion mind natively, without a vocabulary, it really is like drowning in the ocean. You can't see the water, you just feel like you're dying.
That is a perfect way to put it.
The waves are crashing over you, tossing you around, and you have zero perspective on what's actually happening. And the goal isn't to become some emotionless robot living only in reasonable mind, right? The goal is what DBT calls wise mind.
Yes, wise mind is the sweet spot.
And the core describe skill is essentially what pulls you out of the water and puts you on the beach. You are still looking at the waves, you still acknowledge the ocean is rough, but you aren't drowning in it anymore.
Exactly. When you're in the water, you are fused with the emotion. But when you're on the beach, you've created the necessary distance to observe it. Wise mind is the synthesis of honoring that valid emotion while bringing your rational faculties online to decide how to respond.
Yeah.
And, that shift from drowning to sitting on the beach isn't just a psychological metaphor. It is a literal, measurable change in your brain's architecture.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I was looking at the neuroimaging studies in our sources, the functional MRI scans, and it's wild to see this happen in real time.
Oh, the fMRI studies are incredible.
They really are. Researchers put people in these machines and expose them to emotional triggers like photos of angry or fearful faces. Naturally, this small almond-shaped structure deep in the brain called the amygdala lights up like a Christmas tree.
Which is our brain's threat detector.
Right, it's sounding the alarm to activate the fight or flight response. But here is the biological hack. When the researchers asked the participants to simply label the emotion they were seeing or feeling, just applying a word to it, the activation in the amygdala physically powered down.
Just from giving it a name.
Just from naming it. And at the exact same time, blood flow and electrical activity surged in the prefrontal cortex.
What's fascinating here is that transfer of energy. It's the key to everything. See, the amygdala doesn't process language or logic. Its only currency is survival and physical arousal.
It just wants to keep you alive.
Exactly. When you encounter a trigger, your amygdala floods your sympathetic nervous system with adrenaline and cortisol. Your breathing gets shallow, your heart rate spikes, you get tunnel vision.
We've all been there.
But language processing happens in the prefrontal cortex, which is your brain's center for executive functioning, reasoning, and cognitive control. So by forcing yourself to search for a word to describe the feeling, you are literally forcing your brain to switch processing centers. You are manually overriding the alarm system.
Man, if this deep dive is clicking for you, if you can already see how naming your emotions could change everything, hit like and subscribe to DBT Me. We go deep on DBT skills that can actually change your life. Because this stuff is just so practical.
It really is.
Like, let's put this in a real-world context for you. Yeah. Imagine you're sitting at your desk and your boss sends you a vague email that just says, "We need to talk. Come to my office."
Oh, the worst email to get. Instant panic.
Instant. And your amygdala doesn't know it's just an email. It treats that message like a tiger that just walked into your cubicle. Your chest gets tight, you feel sick to your stomach, and you are immediately thrown into emotion mind. You're probably drafting a defensive resignation letter in your head.
Oh, 100%.
But if you pause and say to yourself, "I notice my chest is tight and I'm feeling a spike of anxiety," you are manually redirecting the blood flow away from your panic center and into your prefrontal cortex. You are turning down the volume on the threat so you can actually walk into that office with your rational brain intact.
Right. And what's really important to grasp is how deliberate that process has to be. You have to know the mechanics of how to label accurately, which is where the foundation of DBT mindfulness comes in.
Right, because it's not just complaining about how you feel.
No, not at all. In DBT, mindfulness is broken down into what skills, which is what you are doing, and how skills, which is how you are doing it. The describe skill is the second of the core what skills, and it comes immediately after the first skill, which is observe.
Yeah, observe has to come first. If we think about it visually, observe is the camera. It just takes in the raw, wordless data, the sights, the sounds, the physical sensations in your body. It's pure, unfiltered intake.
Just the facts of the present moment.
Exactly. Then, describe is the caption. You take that raw data from the camera and you apply objective, factual language to it.
And that word objective is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. When you write the caption, you are labeling the experience without adding a story, without assumptions, and without judgment.
Which is harder than it sounds.
Oh, it's incredibly hard at first. But doing this effectively promotes a psychological process called decentering.
Decentering. I love that term.
It's so powerful. Decentering is the ability to view your emotions and your thoughts as transient, temporary events passing through your mind and body. You stop seeing them as permanent, absolute truths about who you are or what reality is.
It's the fundamental shift from I am to I notice.
Yeah.
The before and after reframes and the clinical sources we looked at really clarify how decentering feels in practice. Like, let's say you're incredibly stressed.
Yeah.
The default emotion mind statement is usually something like, "This situation is unbearable and I'm a mess."
Right.
That's an I am statement. You're entirely fused with the feeling.
Yeah.
The describe reframe is, "I notice I'm feeling overwhelmed and my chest is tight."
Just notice the immense difference in the weight of those two statements. I am a mess is an identity. It feels permanent. It feels pervasive.
That's heavy.
But I notice I'm feeling overwhelmed is a passing state. It frames you as the sky, and the feeling of overwhelm is just a dark cloud passing through. The sky isn't the cloud, it just holds the cloud for a little while.
That is such a great way to visualize it. Here's another application specifically for our thoughts. When you're hurting, your brain might generate the thought, nobody cares about me.
A very common thought in emotion mind.
Super common. But if you apply the describe skill, your caption becomes, I'm having the thought that I'm alone right now.
And that creates such a vital buffer. You aren't arguing with the thought, and you aren't trying to force toxic positivity by demanding yourself to believe everyone loves me.
Right, you're not gaslighting yourself.
Exactly. You are simply labeling the cognitive event for what it is, a thought firing in your brain.
And it works for physical urges too. Instead of saying, I'm so angry I could scream, the describe reframe is, I notice anger in my body and an urge to raise my voice. By separating the physical sensation from the behavioral urge, you reclaim your agency. Just because you notice the urge to yell doesn't mean you have to act on it.
Yes. You feel the urge, you label the urge, and then you have a choice.
Okay, but I have to push back here.
Go for it.
Because this all sounds beautiful and highly logical when we're sitting here in a reasonable mind analyzing it. But if I'm completely hijacked, if my amygdala is firing on all cylinders, my heart is pounding in my ears, and I'm seeing red, how am I supposed to remember to stop and thoughtfully write a factual caption for my feelings?
Yeah.
The prefrontal cortex is already locked out.
Yeah, that is the single most common and frankly the most valid challenge to this entire framework. How do you access the logical brain when the emotional brain has already cut the power?
Right. It feels impossible.
And that is exactly why the describe skill is almost never used in isolation during a crisis. It is paired with a core distress tolerance tool called the STOP skill.
Okay, the STOP skill.
Yeah. STOP is an acronym designed to basically create a wedge in the door before it slams shut.
So let's break down that acronym because the mechanics of how it interrupts your nervous system are fascinating. The S stands for stop. Just freeze. Don't react. Don't move a muscle.
Literally freeze.
Then the T stands for take a step back. And from what I understand in the research, taking a step back isn't just about physically walking away from an argument, right? It's often a biological step back, like taking a deep diaphragmatic breath.
Yes, the breathing is huge.
Because when you force a deep exhale, you are physically stimulating your vagus nerve, which sends a signal to your heart to slow down. It's a mechanical override to that fight or flight response we talked about earlier.
That's exactly it. You use your physiology to buy yourself a few seconds of cognitive delay. Once you've stopped and taken that biological step back, you move to the O, which is observe.
So turning on that internal camera.
Right. You just notice what you are feeling and sensing. And finally, the P stands for proceed mindfully. That mindful pause, even if it's just 3 seconds, is critical because it prevents what we call secondary emotions.
Secondary emotions. These are the real trap. A primary emotion is just your initial automatic reaction to an event, right? Like someone cuts you off in traffic, and your primary emotion is anger.
Yes, a totally valid, natural survival response.
But if you don't use the STLP skill, if you just let that anger hijack you, you might lay on the horn, scream out the window, fly into a road rage. And then, 10 minutes later, your adrenaline crashes. You feel intense shame about how you acted or panic that you lost control in front of your kids. The shame and the panic are the secondary emotions. They are your feelings about your feelings or your feelings about your reaction.
And if we look at human suffering, the secondary emotions are almost always more painful and long-lasting than the original trigger. I mean, the anger from being cut off would have passed in 90 seconds. But the shame of losing your temper, that can ruin your entire week.
Oh, absolutely.
The mindful pause, combined with the describe skill, stops that snowball effect dead in its tracks. You notice the primary anger, you label it objectively, you let it exist, and you proceed without layering shame or anxiety on top of it.
It makes complete sense mechanically, but I imagine it's incredibly easy to do this wrong and accidentally trigger those secondary emotions anyway.
Yeah.
What are the biggest mistakes people make when they first try to practice the describe skill in the wild?
Oh, there are a few. But the most dangerous pitfall is accidentally turning a description into a judgment. Remember, DBT mindfulness has how skills alongside the what skills.
Yeah.
One of those core how skills is to practice non-judgmentally.
Which is so hard when you're upset.
It really is. A very common mistake is someone trying to use this technique and saying something like, I notice I'm being stupid again, or I'm having the thought that I am pathetic.
But stupid and pathetic aren't objective facts. They're evaluations.
Yeah.
Like if a scientist were standing in your living room observing you, they couldn't objectively measure stupid. They could measure tears, a raised voice, or a clenched jaw. When you slip an adjective like pathetic into your caption, your amygdala interprets that judgment as a brand new internal threat.
Yes, you're basically attacking yourself.
So instead of calming down, your stress response spikes all over again. You have to ruthlessly strip the adjectives away and stick strictly to the nouns of the verbs.
That's spot on. And another frequent mistake is overanalyzing or seeking the absolute perfect word. People think they need a master's degree in poetry to accurately describe their inner world.
Right.
They freeze up thinking, wait, is this existential dread? Or is it melancholic ennui? Or just frustration?
Which is just a trap set by reasonable mind to intellectualize the emotion away. You don't need a complex vocabulary to start flipping the switches in your brain. If you can't name the specific emotion, just name the raw physical sensation.
Yes, keep it simple.
Saying, I notice heat in my face, or I notice something uncomfortable in my stomach, is entirely sufficient. The simple act of noticing and applying any objective language gets the engine of the prefrontal cortex to turn over.
It's all about initiating the process. As long as you're describing observable facts, you are pulling blood flow back to the logical center of your brain, and you are creating that crucial distance.
Honestly, this is so practical. And hey, subscribe to DBT Me and share this with someone who has never been able to put words to what they feel. If these skills are helping you in a YouTube video, imagine what a full DBT program with a trained therapist could do for you.
Seriously, it's life-changing.
So what does this all mean for you as you listen to this? Let's bring this all together. We've explored the sheer distress of being overwhelmed without a vocabulary, the real-time brain chemistry of affect labeling, and the practical mechanics of observing and describing without judgment. The core takeaway here is that naming your emotions isn't some soft, poetic suggestion. It's a biological hack.
A literal hack for your nervous system.
It creates the necessary space between you and your feelings, pulling you out of the chaotic ocean of emotion mind and planting your feet firmly on the solid ground of wise mind.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it becomes abundantly clear why observe and describe are taught before anything else in the DBT framework. They are the foundational bedrock of self-awareness.
You can't do anything else without them.
Right. Every other coping skill, whether you are trying to effectively communicate a boundary, tolerate an unavoidable crisis, or radically accept a painful reality, it all depends entirely on your ability to first know what is happening inside you. You cannot regulate an emotion that you refuse to observe, and you cannot communicate your needs if you cannot describe what you are feeling.
That is such a powerful framework. You have to know what you are looking at before you can change it.
Exactly. And, as we wrap up, I just want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. Consider how much of human suffering, how many broken relationships, lost jobs, and bitter lifelong arguments stem not from our actual primary emotions, but from the immediate, unquestioned stories and judgments we attach to them.
Wow. Yeah.
If everyone in society learned to simply pause, step back, and objectively describe their inner state before reacting to it, how drastically would the world change?
It would be a completely different world.
Yeah.
Less reactive, less defensive, and infinitely more compassionate. Remember, DBT Me is here to educate and empower you, but we're not a substitute for professional mental health care. If you're in crisis right now, please call or text 988. To find a certified DBT therapist, visit behavioraltech.org. You deserve that level of support. The next time that wave of emotion hits you, remember, you don't have to drown in the water. You can step onto the beach, look at the wave, and just name it. We'll see you in the next deep dive.